Somebody presented some information. You know, it could have been when you were 2, it could have been when you were 22, 42, I don't care. But you had an instant learning. Just, you instantly got everything, you understood it, and you could use it right away. Could be as simple as learning to flush the toilet. Flick on a light switch. Right? First time you Velcroed your shoes. I don't care. But I want you to go back and remember that feeling just before you realized you learned something, when you actually did the learning. Feel where it starts in your body. Point to where you feel it. On a scale of 0 to 10, rate the feelings, rate the intensity of the feelings, and just go back to it. See what you saw, hear what you heard, feel what you felt. Now, imagine that that picture of that experience is somewhere out in front of you, around you somewhere, that you could reach out and just touch it. So physically reach out and touch it, wherever it is. Remember, if you don't do the drill, you don't get the skill. Okay, now, trace the periphery of it. And here's what I want you to do. First thing I want you to do, I want you to grab it by the edges and make it twice as big. Notice what happens to the feeling. Now make it twice as tall. Ooh, that's right. And now what I want you to do is, as you look at the picture, I want you to notice if it's like a still picture or is it moving. If it's still, turn it into a movie. Next thing I want you to pay attention to is, are you looking at it as if you're looking at it through your own eyes? Or are you seeing it as if you're watching it on a movie theater screen? If you're watching it as if it's on a movie theater screen, I want you to step into the picture and see it through your own eyes. Notice what happens. And let that feeling surround you. Almost you could wrap yourself in a bubble of that image. And let all of those feelings, all of those filters that you had going on at the time where you learned, really learned, come flooding back. Let all of your cortical connections and all your brain cells go back to that moment of instant learning. And when you know you've got it, and you know it's going to just maintain itself for the rest of the evening, allow your attention to come back to the front of the room, and we'll continue with our process. Take your time. Make it happen for you. What you're learning about now is something NLP calls a convincer strategy. Each and every one of us have these processes, these strings of visual, auditory, kinesthetic information that we sort through. And it's the order and sequence of them that give us the ability to process or think in a certain way. What I'm doing for you now is I'm helping you to activate an instant deep learning strategy, one where you naturally learn quickly. Okay? You don't have to do anything, it's already done. So just enjoy it. Now, here's what I want you to do. I want you to think of a time in your life that's on a scale of, on the shittiness scale, on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the absolute worst, 0 being completely zeroed out, neutral, nothing. Has no impact on you, no relevance, no meaning to you emotionally whatsoever. Pick something that's a 1 or 2. Something that's mildly annoying. What I want you to do now is I want you to notice where in your body you feel it. Point to it. Just like before, I want you to notice that there's a picture somewhere around you connected to that experience. What I want you to do is I want you to point to it and put your hand in it. Make sure it's the right picture. Trace the periphery of it, so you know how big it is and where it is. Notice it's... Oh, okay. You did a big one.
Sorry.
They always do that. We'll talk about that in a minute. Now, here's what I want you to do. As you trace the frame of it. Now, how many people here are old enough to remember the old style televisions that had like the vertical hold knob, the volume knob, stuff like that? Okay. Dating myself here, but Moses was a good friend of mine in college. But anyway, I want you to look at the bottom of that frame, of that image, and I want you to look for the image or the knob that controls the contrast. You guys know what the contrast knob is? It either whites the screen out completely or it turns the screen all the way black. What I want you to do is physically reach out with your hand and find that knob, and I want you to white the image completely out. Notice how it makes you feel. Then turn it all the way black. Notice how that makes you feel, and pick the one that works best for you. Which one worked best for you?
I whited it out.
You whited it out? Good. How about you, Helene? You still
White.
white? How about you?
White.
White?
White.
What?
How about that? How about you? Black? How about you? How about you?
White.
White? Good. Now, go back to the whited out image. Now imagine that your index finger has this magical golden Sharpie in it. And across that screen, all I want you to do is write down the lesson that this experience had to teach you. What did you learn from this? That would be the only thing worth keeping about this experience, and let the rest go. And the screen will scroll, so you have all the room you have. Just physically write it out. And nobody will see this but you, so you can be as explicit. Use whatever colorful metaphors you like. Good. Just keep writing. When you know you've got it, notice the feelings are gone. And then imagine that image shrinking to the size of a postage stamp. And then physically take it and move it behind you. And you know the sound you make when you nail a picture or nail something? Hear that. So it's nailed into your past. And it's gone. How's that?
For me, the picture is on my mind now, so it wouldn't go anywhere.
So point to the picture. Okay, bring it outside. Good. So it's right here.
Yeah.
Now watch my hands.
Okay. What if I want it?
Oh, you want it back?
Yeah. Back in my mind,
How's that?
good.
Better?
Yeah. But that was a good picture.
So you didn't follow instructions.
I just followed my own. Yes.
It works if they follow the instructions. What'd you guys learn? What'd you notice? What happened when you did this?
What I learned is that you can interpret reality the way you want to.
Mm-hmm.
You're in control.
Yeah. You're at the mercy of your own internal coding system. Because that's what determines your reality. It's not the story of what happened that's the problem most of the time. It's how you've coded it neurologically.
So actually, I first started with something that happened that was really bad.
Uh-huh.
Then I started coding it, and at the end, it was good.
It was good. Yeah,
I don't want to
perfect.
get rid of it. It's just
Exactly.
yeah.
So it worked for you then?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. This is how simple change can be. Now, let me ask you just a quick question, Furga. How long had you had that thing that was bothering you?
Well, around 3 months.
Around 3 months?
And that is something big in my life.
Okay. So something big and poof, right? It's a good thing
It's
now.
all good, yeah.
Yes.
I'm just curious, in her example, when what I think I heard her saying was, I don't want to get rid of the lesson.
Yeah.
No, you never get rid of the lesson.
Right, but I'm thinking that when you think about nailing that shut in your past, that it's almost like I wonder if she felt like she's nailing the whole thing shut, but you didn't nail the lesson shut. I mean,
No, you don't nail it shut. It's there as a reference. Now, I'll explain a lot of what we did. A lot of very intense, very complex neuro-linguistic stuff. Although it was very simple, wasn't it? If you think about it, it was really quite a simple process, right? How many people here dealt with something they'd had for at least a year? Okay. More? Okay. So something you've been dealing or carrying around for a year or longer, gone in how freaking long? Right? Now here's how most people screw themselves up with this technology. Most times when they're learning NLP, most of us learn it, well, it comes into two basic categories. We learn NLP to be more successful in our business. That's actually a much smaller component than you might think. Most of us have some stuff we want to deal with, something we want to fix. The problem with a lot of how we do things using NLP is it's very difficult to be the driver and the passenger at the same time. It's always more useful to have somebody guiding you step by step through each of these processes multiple times, and then you guiding people through these processes multiple times until you know it like the back of your hand. And just like when you were a kid playing pretend, you can completely absorb yourself in that process. That's how you do this for yourself. Okay? If you don't have that level of absorption and focus, you will not get the same level of result if you're trying to do this for yourself. Does that make sense? So literally, you can do this for yourself anytime, anywhere, as long as you're focused and absorbed and have that playful mindset. Playful. You see, the more playful you become, the more access to your own internal resources, both sides of your brain that you have. The more your body starts to release what John Laval, Richard's training partner, calls brain juice. But they're happy brain juices. Specifically oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine. When that happens, the cortical connections in your brain become very, very plastic. Anybody here know what plastic means? What does it mean?
Hardwired, the ability to change.
Yeah, it becomes very, very changeable for the time that those chemicals are present. Remember when I started at the beginning of this show, I said, who here likes to feel good for no friggin' reason? Right? If you can learn how to feel good and just stimulate powerful, positive emotions, you can completely rewrite your neurology faster. Okay? That's not something most people spend a lot of time on, either in the NLP fields, which is really sad, because only Richard really focuses on it. It's part of an advanced process he calls neuro-hypnotic repatterning. Nobody else teaches it. Nobody else can. But if you can stimulate oxytocin release, if you can stimulate dopamine and serotonin release, all the neurological connections in your brain become easier to change faster. I've literally seen spider phobias cured by 10 minutes of intense orgasm. Okay? I swear to God. Richard doesn't know what it did. That was another guy. But Richard actually brought a couple people up and using, I don't know if he was using orgasm specifically, but intense pleasure states. He literally restored a guy's sense of smell that he had lost when he was 5 due to a bacterial infection. He literally caused his entire nervous system to rewire itself and give him back his sense of smell.
Words?
Yes. Well, it's not just by words. It's about learning how to interact with the human nervous system to create maximum. Yes, but yes, it's entirely. I saw it. I'd heard about it for years. I'd never seen it. I've been studying hypnosis since I was 15. NLP since I was 22. I had heard people getting their brains rewired after strokes, things like that. Yes.
Are you talking about Richard Bandler?
Richard Bandler, yeah.
I turned it off. But apparently not all the way.
Apparently not. Okay, so here, let me just a little bit of explaining what happened with Fariba, just so you might have caught it all, but maybe not. What she did was she started off following the instructions. She took something that had been bothering her. She found the feeling. Always find the feeling. This is something that if you go to other NLP people, they're going to pay attention with the picture. If you don't bridge the feelings, if they don't bridge the feelings like I'm teaching you, run. Okay, it may or may not work then. Okay, not to the same degree.
What do you mean by bridge?
In other words, a lot of NLP trainers, when they do these kind of what they call submodality interventions, finding the pictures, they'll have you focus almost exclusively on manipulating the picture. But what they won't do is they won't do what I call a somatic bridge. They won't bridge between the body feelings and the picture, physically bridge between it. In my experience working with everything from cancer to rape, molestation, and into performance enhancement. I mean, I've run the gamut. I've had people get transplanted organs who literally start taking on the memories and behaviors of the person they got the transplant from. Okay, I mean, I've people just have hysterical paralysis. Their fingers and hands just stop moving because they're angry at somebody, and they train themselves to write with their other hand, and then that one stopped moving. Okay, I don't get weight loss. I don't get smoking. I get the really bizarre stuff. Okay, which, and by the way, just for the record, I have about 100% success rate with weight loss. Unfortunately, I get about 3 a year because that's just not the people I attract, right? But the point is that NLP tends to, and the way most people teach NLP, is they tend to focus on one modality at a time. So if they're working, if they classify you as a visual, someone who relies a lot on visual information more than they rely on anything else. Yeah. What they're going to do is they're going to spend a lot of time manipulating the visuals, right? Depending on how much absorption and how connected they are to you, you may or may not get the change, and it may or may not be permanent. However, everything that the body and the mind does always ends in a feeling state. Whether it's internally generated feeling state or an external behavior, it's a feeling, it's a kinesthetic, as NLP would call it. Yes?
What role did color play that you had a few earlier, like you get the feeling and you get the picture? What about the color?
The color is how you coded that experience. So when I start talking about the somatic address, where in your body do you store that feeling? Okay. Anybody here do body work of any kind? Okay, you do body work. You do body work? So you know that every now and then you hit a spot and all of a sudden they burst out laughing, they burst into tears, whatever. We're tapping into that same somatic location in the body, but now we're adding all the other coding systems into it so that we get more bandwidth in the brain and more areas of the brain activated. The more areas of your brain you get absorbed and activated in that process, the greater the degree of change, the faster the degree of change. The cortexes in your body, your visual cortex and your kinesthetic and your auditory cortexes overlap by as much as 40% in certain areas. So if you're only working in the visual, you're missing 2/3 of what you could be doing. If you're only working in auditory, which NLP calls the modalities, if you haven't figured it out already, visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, gustatory, right? Those are the building blocks of your thoughts. It's the order and sequence of those thoughts that determine your strategies, how you go about doing certain things. It's the tiny pieces of that that make up the experience itself. So for instance, when I started talking to you about, I'll come back to I'll close this loop. When I started talking about, how big is the picture? Is it moving or is it still? Right? Is it color or is it black and white? Those were sub-elements of the big ones. When I start talking about visual, I start talking about color, black and white. I start talking about, is it moving or is it still? Right? Are you seeing it through your own eyes? Or are you watching it like you're on a movie theater screen? Those are the sub-elements, the code that makes it meaningful neurologically to you. Those are the things that we need to change, because that's how you code your experiences. And once you, yes?
Sorry. So when you coded, when we did the positive one, I felt something on my chest, and when you said to expand it, it didn't like go up, but it said it just jumped to my head area.
Yep.
Does that happen?
Yes. Because remember, if we've done the somatic bridge properly, any change we do out here must create a change in the body as well. It's all connected. Okay, I'm a licensed acupuncturist. I know about meridians, I know about pressure points, I also have over 800 hours of Western medical training. My wife is a doctor, has a PhD in biochemistry, she's a doctor of chiropractic, and a licensed acupuncturist. She is the valedictorian of her acupuncture class and her chiropractic class at the same time. I have to be smart, because she will call me on everything. Okay, which means I don't get to have normal conversations at home. I have to talk about all this really deep stuff. So one of the things that we need to understand is you cannot separate mind and body. It's just an arbitrary distinction made by a dumb Frenchman back in the day. I think, therefore I am. Remember that one? Not so much. It's how we think that creates who we are. Right? Most of us don't really think, though. That's what Richard kind of came out with. We confuse thinking with remembering. See, if we think back to a time when we're 2 and we get shitty feelings, well, we're not really thinking, we're remembering. When we get into a new situation and we have old feelings that are familiar, anybody ever have that? Guess what? You're not thinking, you're remembering. There comes a time in our life, ladies and gentlemen, where thinking, or just remembering isn't enough. But your brain is hardwired to do that. It's hardwired to make things familiar until you teach it to do something else. Now, there are certain times in our life when we want things to be the same, right? Some things need to stay familiar. If we learn the spelling of a word, it's important to remember how it's spelled, right? We don't want the spelling to change. So we need that balance. We need the control. We need the freedom. But first, in order to have that, we need to understand that there's something else going on. We're confusing the act of remembering with the process of thinking. Does that make sense? So getting back to what thread was I on when I kind of got off into this whole neurological tangent? You're good with it? Yeah. Okay. Does anybody not clear on what I'm talking about? This means yes, this means no. Anybody need a caffeine induction?
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, grab some coffee while I answer a question.
What if you have difficult recalling memories on command? Like you're like, pick a happy memory. And oh crap, I don't know. What is that?
Well, usually what happens is you get a feeling, but you can't recall the specific memory. NLP calls that a gestalt. It's basically the way your nervous system has coded a bunch of experiences together. And usually a lot of it can happen is you actually do get a picture or something, but it happens so fast that you're onto something else. So really sometimes all you have to do is slow the picture down or go with the first thing that pops into your head. Because usually what happens is something pops into her head. Like when I was working with Fariba, and she said blue, and I said, you had a color before that, what was the first one? And she said pink. How did I know that? Her nonverbals. She went, blue.
I had to close my eyes and feel it. My first impression was pink, but then I thought, or I
Here,
felt
my
that
first
I
impression was pink, and then I thought. This is another stumbling block.
Actually, not thought. I felt that a more responsible action is to really go feel it. So I closed my eyes to see it. And
Here's the secret. When working, and you're fine with that, the secret is you always, regardless of how it doesn't seem accurate, it doesn't seem right, it doesn't seem quite like you think it should be. Whatever the unconscious mind answers with first is always the way to go. Because the unconscious mind does not lie. Your body does not lie. In NLP, you'll learn what we call advanced sensory acuity and calibration skills. It's basically how to speed read people. Okay? Your unconscious mind always answers about a half a second to sometimes as much as 5 seconds before the words that come out of your mouth. Okay? It's important to know. If you ask somebody, like in a sales call or something like that, do you have any questions before we go forward? They go, no. That's fine. But if they go, no, right? Then you know that something, you need to look deeper. You need to be paying attention to people on multiple levels. That's a big task. I mean, yes?
What were your other websites? You said David X.
Well, David X I'm kind of phasing out because I'm getting more into helping people live the kind of life they want instead of hacking the system, kind of a thing. Although that's kind of what I'm about, is really finding new, better, faster ways to get the life you want, kind of a thing. But you can go to NLPpower.com is where I have some free videos on relationship stuff you can watch. I also have a site called Unlimited Lover, which is more about relationships, sexuality. Unlimited Lover. Unlimited Lover, yeah. The demographic for that is largely male, but pretty much everything on there applies to females as well. And I highly recommend people who want to learn about that stuff. We do classes, very application-specific classes on that. Also, you can go to learnhypnosis.com, which is my school website. It's San Diego Hypnosis Institute. And we'll have some stuff about upcoming trainings and things like that. I'm also going to be telling you about some trainings tonight that you might want to take advantage of. Some are virtual, some are live, but you guys pick whatever you think fits you. Because this is how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And I'd much rather encourage you to take something that is a little smaller chunk but more specific and a fit for what you want and need than to try and force feed you an entire elephant's worth of information. Does that make sense? Okay. So here's what I want you to do. What we did with Fariba, going back to this, because we kind of got off on a tangent. Anybody here need to go potty? Go. We'll take 5 minutes. Grab some coffee, because sometimes it goes through us. You guys having fun with this? Yeah. This cool?
I have started to ask you. He and I both raised our hands at the same time, and you said, do you have any questions before I continue using that as an example?
Sure. Cool.
What tiny little bit of NLP exposure I've had has something more to do, or as much to do with the words you ask. Instead of asking, do you have any more questions before we go forward, would be, what questions do you put before you move forward? Like more in thinking about how you use your verbiage to get people to actually answer you in a way that's going to be useful, and yes/no questions. I think, generally are not that informative, actually. So, kind of, what's your take on that?
Well, I think it depends on the tactics you're applying. What's your overall strategy? If you're trying to elicit a lot of questions, then what questions you have presupposes everybody has questions.
Right, and then
which means they will start to generate them. And when you're in a situation where time is of the essence and the possibility of going off on tangents is extremely, especially with me, extremely likely, then you want to make sure that only the people whose questions are at the top of their mind are coming out, more so than causing people to or using a presupposition that generates questions.
So yeah, I guess I'm thinking in the context where this isn't you're trying to close a sale right now or something, where you're trying to gather information.
And if you really wanted to tweak that for a sales perspective, you say, before we go further with this, what questions do you have? And there, we call that the Frank Kern pattern, because what it does is it uses a temporal presupposition that they're going to sign it, they're going to go ahead with the sale.
Right. You're planting the seed, so to speak.
And we talk a lot more about that stuff in my advanced persuasion skills class and stuff. But again, in a situation, if I had 12 hours or 8 hours to just field everybody's questions and zap people, then I would be much more evocative in certain things. But right now, I really just want to touch on people who are, I need this question answered right now, kind of thing.
Right, and so I guess my question then probably would be: am I completely off base in thinking about the words we choose to use and the order that we use them in has an important component?
Oh, it's critical. It's absolutely critical.
Okay.
Yeah, but at what point is it something that you can actually use? You see, the problem, and I was just going through. I go through a lot of. I look at other people's training materials and things like that. When it comes to NLP, I make a joke. To err is human. To really complicate things, you need a neuro-linguistic programmer.
Right.
A lot of times, the way we are taught something, the way we're introduced to something, creates a set of filters in our mind that makes things harder or easier, depending on how it's presented. And so, one of the things that is important is you have to give people things that they can assimilate and put into practice, which are usually the simplest. And as they gain familiarity with those processes, they become ready to assimilate more. The biggest challenge, the biggest problem I see with most approaches to training NLP is, especially if they're doing like a weekend class, is they try to cram literally weeks worth of information into 3 days and expect you to actually be able to do any of it. I'd rather teach you much less but go very deep into those skill sets so that you come out with a practical ability to use those in any situation or circumstance, and have you come back as you're ready for more information. Then try to just, ram it all down your throat and hopefully something sticks. Now, there will always be people who want it all right then and there, and that's cool. That's cool. But again, you have to, I believe, I'm a teacher first. So, and my name is on your certificate. So if you're going out there and you can't actually do it, it's on me. But you have some great questions about language. Yes, language is critical. But at what point does it become more important than the other stuff? And that depends on the situation or the event that you're working with.
We use language to encode everything.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I mean, unless you're deaf.
And even then, we still use language.
Right, but it's not a spoken language.
Right. So, did I answer your question?
You can read an insight.
Okay, that's a no. What was your...
I'm going to let this guy ask a question.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned you're licensed or certified NLP?
Yes.
Who licenses or certifies?
The Society of NLP licenses.
I see. And that's it. I know. I have Bandler's book. He's absolutely amazing. And
he's crazy, too.
Is he?
In a fun way, yeah.
That's interesting. So you've worked with him?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Because my understanding, I also read Tony Robbins' books, and apparently Tony Robbins happened to be, quite successful in, all the markets.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tony's very successful.
Yes. Have you met Paul McKenna as well?
No, I have never got a chance to meet Paul. Yeah.
He's amazing.
Yeah, he's one of Richard's top trainers over in the UK.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have some of his books.
As a matter of fact, there was one. This is kind of a funny story. I was at my trainer's training, and one of the ladies who trains over there with Paul, she goes up to me, she goes, you remind me a lot of Paul McKenna. And she goes, and then I go, oh, thank you. I hate Paul McKenna. Because he talks so fast. And then I talk very fast. So.
Not in his hypnotherapy stuff.
Yeah.
On his CDs, he's very slow. It was nice and slow.
But that was just one of the Tina said.
So you're a master NLP...
I'm a master practitioner and a certified trainer in neuro-linguistic programming.
Cool. So if one wants to get involved in training, would you be an instructor for this stuff?
Yeah. I can certify you up through Master Prac. And then you'd have to go see Richard and train with John and Richard over in Orlando.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'd love to get...
yeah, I'll tell you guys about that.
Okay.
Towards right about 9:30. Well, we're here till 10.
Totally.
Right. Yeah. So right about 9:30.
Okay.
Remind me, and we'll go into how to go further with that. Right.
How about your sessions?
Oh, you want to do sessions? Yeah.
How is it the structure?
Basically, the way we sit down and we talk about what you want to do, and we determine together if the processes I use and what you want is something that's a fit. In other words, can I actually do for you what you need? And if the answer is yes, then we'll go forward with the session and the change work. If it's not, I will recommend you to somebody who I think can do the work that I can't do.
And the price, how much?
Go ahead.
How much does that cost?
Usually it's $175 a change.
A change?
Yeah. So.
What about sessions that you sit down?
The sessions, well, again, usually we do about an hour block. But honestly, with most NLP, it doesn't even take that long. But what I usually do is after I've done the change work through NLP, I'll go back and I'll do a hypnotic process where I'll reinforce and reintegrate things. If there's any cleaning up stuff I need to do, then I'll use actual hypnosis to do that. So it's kind of a combination of things. So it's usually an hour block, right around 175. Yeah.
How would we contact you to schedule an appointment?
Glad you asked, because I have a whole bunch of cards that I'm going to hand out. Yeah, I got all that stuff. It's just not at that point yet. But thank you for asking. Keep me on track if I forget, because I get carried away with the teaching part, and I forget to tell people about how to go further. Because I usually have a guy in the back who says, David, tell them about this, and I forget. Yes?
I'd like to talk to you later.
Sure.
After everything is done.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. My pleasure. I'm glad everybody's having a good time. By the way, the technique you learned is not a standard NLP technique, although it's built out of NLP techniques. It's called a magic frame. Okay, we'll take 2 more minutes and then we'll come back. You having fun?
I'm absorbing.
That's a no. Hi there. How you doing?
Still very just that's a lot of more like casual.
Yeah, right, I know. I was waiting for you to superheroes. I want to know mine.
I need some Java, man. Yes, sir. Yes, I do. What James did, and then after a while, I just focused on what Richard was doing and the people that he came through his school, and I drank the Kool-Aid, so to speak. But I'm really big on skills work, and that's where I think most people need to focus. But Tad's got some good stuff. Matt James broke away from his dad, and he's certifying, but they're all doing like these Learn NLP for $97 home study courses. Well, I mean, okay, it's fine.
How much of it is hypnosis based?
All of it.
And how much is just, was this hypnosis?
Here's the thing you got to understand. If you want to be an unstoppable neuro-linguistic programmer, you must be good at hypnosis. A lot of trainers will try to downplay the hypnosis part. They'll say, learn NLP and get certified in hypnosis. No. No. And I'm going to tell you why. Because NLP, one of the biases... Did I answer your question, Helene? I'm sorry.
Not really.
Okay. There's a lot of people teaching and training NLP. There's a lot of practitioners.
But it sounds like there's 3 kind of streams of practice.
There's actually more than that, but most of them come either through Tad James. If you go back along the NLP family tree, you'll see basically they come from Richard, they come from Tad James, Richard Bandler. Richard Bandler, Tad James, or John Grinder. The original founders of NLP were John Grinder and Richard Bandler. And then Tad was one of their early students. And his son Matt was actually the youngest person ever to be certified as a trainer in NLP. So he's been around for a while, but I mean he got certified early. But everybody else comes from usually Tad.
So the Society of NLP.
Society of NLP.
That is
Richard Bandler. Yeah.
His training gives you that certification,
yes.
but not the other 2 guys.
They will certify you. Yes.
But through the Society of NLP, that's what I mean.
It's only Richard. Yeah. Yeah, and they're the only ones that own the license for the advanced NLP technologies of neurohypnotic repatterning and design human engineering. They're parallel technologies. They can stand by themselves, but they're basically expansions and extensions of NLP into more artistic. Well, not going to say artistic, but more the ability to custom create your own brain and really develop your latent potentials and things like that. Like ways to turn up your senses, ways to create musical abilities, ways to, just tap in and create talents in you. DHE is pretty much what is built on the foundations of NLP, but it takes you in a much more generative direction. That helps. Okay? But, yep. Again, please, if you ask me a question and for some strange reason I answer everything but the question, please let me know. Okay? Because sometimes where I need to go isn't where I wind up going. It's a limited behavior. I'm a natural open looper, which as you get into advanced NLP, you'll find out there's this thing they call nested loops or open loops, where they basically tell a story, and before they finish the story, they start another story. And then before they finish that story, they start another story. Okay. It's where it comes from. Is the whole concept of nested loops, which Bandler pretty much created. And then what happens is you give them all the suggestions you want within that. Then you close the last story. Then you close the other story, and then everything gets wrapped in, and the unconscious mind just goes to town on it.
Like a good Seinfeld episode.
Mm-hmm. A lot of stuff is basically building response potential. Basically, you give them a tease, you go off somewhere else, like, wait, you didn't finish this. And that anticipation, that anticipatory response keeps them focused on you and more open to suggestion, then you can close things up. Bandler's entire trainer's training is all about how to do nested loops on people. I do it naturally, but sometimes I forget to close them. And that's kind of the beauty of NLP, is NLP was a system of asking the right kind of questions that would create models of how people do things so that you could learn them faster and replicate what they do. And so, see, I open loop myself. But that's and then you forget. Yeah. But then again, but I usually manage to close most of my loops. It's just one of those things. But those open loops create that desire to know, and they make you more receptive. You'll see it in a lot of good sales copy, a lot of good emails. They'll do a thing like, how many people do any kind of email marketing? Okay. How many people know how to do an incomplete thought email?
Now that you mention it, yeah.
Okay. Like for instance, like if let's say I'm having an email that focuses on the reason why you're broke.
Yes.
Right? In the subject line, I would write the reason. Instant email open. Right? As opposed to if I actually wrote out the reason why you're broke. right? Notice how, even though the broke gives you more specificity, that itch that makes you know, what the frick is he asking me about? What reason? What's he talking about? It's a little more subtle, but it tends to generalize and make you open the email to figure out the rest of the thought. Whereas if the reason you're broke doesn't match your current situation, or you're not concerned about being broke or making money, you might not open that email. See, when we think about that little tease kind of a thing, we almost always complete the thought. We go with the reason why you're broke, right? But that's a complete thought, which means beginning, middle, end. We know what it's about. And if that fits us, then we'll open it. But the reason why what? Shit! And you open the email. Right? Some people just hit delete because they don't want to deal with it anyway, but you'll get more opens using that than you will completing the thought. That goes back to nested loops, embedded commands. It's all about the brain is a question-answering organism. It must seek to answer any question you put to it. I will prove that to you with a ridiculous example right now. Why, in fact, using all of your great problem-solving creative capacities, why, in fact, is the moon made of green cheese? Now, there will be two processes. One is, what the fuck did he just ask me? And why? And then there will be the other part of you, the rational part of you, that says, well, maybe thinking about it like this, or it could be this, or it could be that. Right? There's a part of you, in spite of how nonsensical the question is, that's trying to generate a plausible, acceptable answer. You asked me about language earlier, and is order and sequence important? What's more important is the quality of the question you ask and the presuppositions embedded in it. Because that determines the direction of your thoughts. Many people ask, why does this shit always happen to me? Why do I keep attracting the same guys over and over again? The unconscious mind goes, oh, she wants a list. And it starts generating a list of reasons why you keep doing this crap. Because that's the question you asked. How many people say, why does this always happen to me? Raise your hand. Okay, the rest of you are lying. Okay? Why does this always happen? Why do I keep attracting the same kind of person into my life? Why do these situations keep happening over and over? Yes?
I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to stop you right in the middle of your sentence. Isn't that why, that's my big problem with the whole concept of digging in, of spending the majority of the time digging in psychotherapy into the reason why things are wrong.
Yeah.
It's like totally wasted.
That's why most psychotherapists can't cure phobia. Yeah. They're more interested in finding out how you got screwed up than how you can fix it. Okay? This is what, and NLP, and don't get Richard started on this because he will go off for hours on Psycho the Rapists. Sorry, it's just one of those things. But you understand that NLP is all about studying what works. How many people here are good spellers? How many people are bad spellers? Okay, how many people would like to be good spellers? Okay. Here's how you become a good speller. Make the fucking letters bigger. Most people, sorry, do my colorful metaphors offend you? Yes. Okay, sorry. I'm going to do it anyway.
Sorry.
Because I warned you. Okay? But here's the thing. When most of the time, you know who creates bad spellers? Teachers. Most visual, you know that spelling is obviously a visual process, right? But most of us are taught to sound out letters. Bad way to do it. Right? You can't even spell phonics phonetically. Right? But we don't want to know how you got to be a bad speller. We want to know how can you become a good speller. Right? Here's how you do it. Most good spellers, when they access the spelling capacity, they make the letters bigger, about 18 inches. They make them in different colors. Most of the time when we're learning how to spell, a lot of us will naturally do this. We're sitting at our desk, right? and we'll go to spell a word, and we'll go. Well, anytime you see somebody looking up, it means they're accessing the visual cortex of their brain. Okay? But many times, our well-meaning teachers will say something to the effect of, the answers aren't on the board, young man, or on the ceiling, young man, and so what do you look down at your paper? Now, when you look down, you're accessing your feelings. Not really easy to see visual stuff when you're deep in feelings. Or sometimes you're just looking to the sides, which is auditory. These are all things that we do with our body that indicate what we're doing with our brain. These come out in the gestures we use, in the eye movements that we use, and the exact order and sequence of words that come out of our mouth. NLP has cataloged all of these and teaches them in a very clear, systematic way that you can start utilizing this stuff to make your communications more clear, to easily understand how other people are thinking, so that you can communicate in their own language. Each of you has your own language. Even though we're speaking English, arguably, each of you has a checklist. Each of you has a filtering system and a set of words and parts of your brain that you use in a specific order to make sense of things. Some might be visual, auditory, kinesthetic. You might see something, talk to yourself about it, and then get a feeling about whether it's right or wrong. Some of you might know when something just grabs you, and you tell yourself that this looks like a good thing. That's the exact inverse of the strategy I just described. I grab something that's kinesthetic. I tell myself about it. It looks like a good thing. It's visual, right? Just that sequence of words tells me the structure of that thought. When I'm communicating to somebody, if I'm turning attention to the order and sequence and the kinds of words coming out, I know how you think. And so when I communicate with you, I can communicate with you in that way. And you will understand me. You will feel more connected to me. You will feel that I understand you better. Because I'm speaking in the way you naturally process language, rather than you having to interpret what I'm saying. Remember, the easier and more comfortable you can make how you communicate with people, or how easy it is for them to understand you, the more rapport you generate, the more trust you build, and the faster they agree to what you want them to do. Okay? Yes?
How would you do that in a general setting where you speak to a bunch?
How would I do what in the general setting?
Try to communicate most effectively with a wide array of people from demographics.
So if I were to communicate with you in a wide array of general specifics, you said? Or?
Of the people.
Of the people, great. So what's important about that?
How can I, for instance, I speak to people that different age demographics, different backgrounds, multicultural.
Different age demographics, backgrounds.
Right. I see what you mean.
Do you feel comfortable?
Yeah, but you're not answering anything.
No, but I am getting rapport with you, right? But I just demonstrated the answer. You order and sequence of the words that you use. Now, you can do it two ways. You can use the exact words, which is cheating, but there's a lot of good stuff that comes with that. Because it automatically goes right to that little checklist we talked about earlier. See, there's a whole list of levels that reach down to your most deeply held emotional experiences. And NLP would teach you to just dig. And when I asked you what's important about that, and you went a little deeper into it, did you notice that?
Yes.
Okay, and you had a little bit more of an emotional response. That's what we call looking for criterias and values. If you're going to do sales or persuasion or motivate people, this is what you need to do. You need to dig down to the most deeply held emotional hot buttons and connect what they most want and value to what you want them to do in a way that they recognize doing it gets them what they want. You don't have to do features and benefits. You don't have to give them a laundry list of what your product will do. All you really have to do is say, Helene, what's the most important thing about you coming here tonight? What's it doing for you? And what do you want to get out of it?
It's giving me context around a process I participated in earlier.
Okay.
And was very curious about.
Okay, cool. So you were curious about a process you participated in earlier. Can you elaborate on that?
I worked with a coach who completely changed the way that I think.
Okay.
And at the end of and it was one night a week for 16 weeks over the phone.
Okay.
And at the end of which I said, I was there every second of the time with you, and I don't have a clue what you did to me, but I know I'm changed.
Excellent. So you want to know more about how you got changed.
How I got changed.
Yes. And you were there every second, and you don't have a clue what they did, but you know you were changed.
Yes.
Do you see the response?
Uh-huh.
Did you even realize?
No.
That's my point. When you start speaking to someone in their own language, using their own criteria and values, even though for the first few seconds they might realize what you're doing, they won't care. They will not care because you're talking to them in the deepest, most important language they have. And you're talking about what's most important to you. Right?
So, how do you connect to their emotions?
How do you connect?
Yeah.
You pay attention to the words that come out of their mouth and the order and sequence that they come out, and you make sure that you use them in that sequence.
You use whatever they say?
Whatever they say.
Say it back?
Just say it back.
You repeated it back to me.
Very easy.
You repeated it back to me, and it made me feel like I'm a great communicator.
Yes. Yes.
What if you don't understand really? That's not your experience.
What if you don't understand?
Yeah.
What if it's really not your experience?
You just say whatever they say,
Yeah, you just say whatever they say.
even if you don't understand.
Even if you don't understand.
Wow.
People perceive that sometimes. People can feel that you're not really.
That's the point, though. If you're congruent with it and you're doing it for a legitimate and sincere reason, it won't matter. You see, what happens a lot of times is people do this as a trick. Instead of coming from